Right, so welcome back. We are now post Daytona 100. I'm back in the UK and I'm cold and recovering. What we're December the 17th, and I flew back in on Monday morning. So yeah, we will touch on everything that happened whilst I was away. Anyway, how's your week going, Fletch?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good so far. I've dodged the flus that have been bouncing around. I've been Anthony Joshuaing around the house. Any cough that comes in, quick slip there. It's been good. But we are due to push to the App Store again today, which I'm excited about.
Very good, very good. Well, the good news for me is that hopefully there's not a lot on the training program for this week.
Yeah, there is zilch. It is clear a path for you this week.
So yeah, no, I think I actually feel all right today. I'm moving around and not in too much pain. Um, I feel don't have a massive desire to go out for a run, but I definitely feel like I'm not sort of stuck in my chair and unable to move. So that's a good start.
I think it'd be a good time to give the listeners a full rundown of a sort of a paragraph of the journey, the run, the plane journey back. The time frames of that exact situation.
Yeah. So in hindsight, I probably booked my return travel a day earlier than was optimal. But no, I flew out on the Wednesday, and so I had Thursday, Friday over there. I actually had some work to do on Thursday, or work meeting on Thursday, but kind of wanted to be out there and not kind of rushing straight into it. As it transpired, the race started pretty early on the Saturday morning, so it was a 5:30 a.m. start. So I kind of stuck to the UK time zone, so that I was actually waking up about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning anyway, and sort of stuck on that time on the basis that come Saturday morning, I'd want to get up well before race time anyways. So in that regard, it kind of worked pretty well. Although I found myself kind of trying to find relatively quiet, empty restaurants in sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, wondering why no one else was there. So I was looking for an evening meal.
Just packing
Anyway,
down for
being
lunch.
America, they were very polite and served me, so that all went well. But yeah, the we'll dive into the race in a bit more detail in a second. So I finished the race Saturday night or Sunday morning, effectively. Got a couple of hours sleep, and then I went back down to the finish, to kind of see people come in. And I flew out that afternoon, which was pretty horrible, to be honest. Going through the airport, and I've done this twice now, but I've done the kind of go up to the check-in desk and say, any chance, I've just run 100 miles, or in the case of the time I did it in Nova Scotia, I was like, I've just run 200K. Any chance of like an upgrade or and they just look at me totally blank and don't even flinch. And I'm like, and I think it's because it's such a crazy thing to come up to the check-in desk and say that, that they just are like, what? No, just put your bag on the scale and just carry on.
I'm probably thinking, like, why don't you just get a taxi here? That's much easier. Why running 100 miles for an airplane?
Exactly. Anyway, so I flew overnight Sunday night, landed Monday morning in Heathrow, had a meeting on Monday, so I had to stay up in London. So I had a fairly, I basically drove out of Heathrow and was getting quite tired. So I pulled over at Heston Services and fell asleep in the back seat for an hour. It's the luxury side of all this stuff is a bit, alternative. Anyway, so the journey back was not without, wasn't the most comfortable. I think I'm not the right size for economy seats at the best of times. So it was definitely pretty punchy.
Love it. I kind of feel like most of the airlines now are even squishier than they should be in regards to the spacing between seats. I remember having
Yeah,
at least half an inch between my knees and the seat in front. That's now been reduced to I've got minus half an inch.
I know. I think there should be some sort of, uh, I don't know. I feel the equality push has not hit airline seats for tall people yet. And it seems to be going the other direction. But anyway. So yeah, so that was that. So in the middle, we just had a little 100 miler, and I guess we can go through what happened. how it went.
Official, is it an official PB now?
It's official, yeah, because I think would have been the autumn 100 last year. I went sub 24, I think. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. And then in Nova Colia. I went through 100 miles at a PB time, but I don't quite know what the time was. I just what was that? So this now it was 19 hours 14 minutes on the clock. So sub 20, I guess, pretty good. Um, Considering, and a big, I think probably a couple of hours quicker than Nova Coley, and probably what's that, 3 or 4 hours quicker than three and a half, 4 hours quicker than the autumn 100. So that's a decent increase.
Bet you were glad you didn't have to run for another 3 to 4 hours after you finished.
Yeah, there was a bit of that going on. But then it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I feel like 100 miles on Nova Coley, I was like, well, I'm not there yet, so you just keep going. And the minute you finish, the journey from there to the hotel, which in Italy was about 500 meters, is like an insurmountable amount of distance. But you've run 200 kilometers, so why is 500 meters impossible? And exactly the same thing here. I was like finished, and I was like, I've got to get from here to like just over there to get to an Uber to get back to the hotel. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that.
I need an adult.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I need some assistance. No, so I think that, I guess on reflection, I went through, there's kind of lots of different bits. I guess fueling and hydration is a big one. And I definitely feel like this one went really well. Like I've made up my own sachets. So I went a bit kind of, what do we say? Well, but I got a bit OCD on it. But basically, I find, bottom line is the tailwind sachets that I normally carry with me. We had this in Italy. Are if I put a whole one into a bottle, it's too concentrated. So then I'm faffing around like trying to pour a bit of powder, not all of it, and all the rest of it. Anyway, I made them up to the same amount, or the right amount rather, and that worked really well. Was simple, easy, less thinking, less working, less of that. So that was good.
You feel a little bit like Breaking Bad in your kitchen.
Yeah, well, I was a bit worried that I was flying, let's face it, American customs not known for their leniency, right? And I was flying out with a bag full of unmarked foil, you know, whatever, foil heat sealed little pouches, all unmarked, all full of white powder. I'm like, yeah, they're carbohydrate, like well, I was quite pleased when I got there to find they were all still in my bag and had not been, involved in some controlled explosion or something. So yeah, so that part went well. What else have we got? So I had Tailwind and Morton gels for the duration, and it just was easy, worked, no problem. And I think kind of, I think from a fueling perspective and hydration, that was kind of on point. And we talked before about, because I used to take Psycaps, the kind of electrolyte capsule, and shared the details with you, and we kind of agreed they weren't really adding much to the party, and so dropped them out, and that was a minor, just like another bit less admin to do as you're running along, which definitely helps. So that was good. I had that Tailwind in it, Tailwind high carb. I had some of that with me, but I just couldn't face it. I knew it kind of tasted quite strong, and I just made the call. I'm like, I don't want to risk it. And although I'd used it quite a lot in my long runs, I just knew I wasn't going to feel like drinking a bottle of it. So that was that. Trainers was another one. We kind of talked about the free trainer advice that you granted. Another win actually was that my size of trainer had run out in the UK, but they had them in America. So I was able to get, just in case, I was able to order another pair of my original trainers, and because they were delivered out, because they were delivered out straight to the hotel in the States. I mean, that's kind of like totally off the books, isn't it? So that's
No record of that apart from on here.
So that was good. So they were there when I got there.
How Beyonce of you.
I know, exactly. Yeah, so that was good. But I started off in the cellos and I switched to the other ones, and I think that was wise. They're just a bit too tight, and as you once you've done your first marathon, your feet start to spread a bit, and I just was worried they were going to blister up, so did that. And then I think the next bit was I guess from my perspective, was the kind of race overall. I felt that things went off pretty well. I was sort of, we talked about pacing and kind of a bit of a plan, but not, there's so many variables and it's such a long way. Like you're not going to sit there looking at your watch going, oh my God, what am I on? So it went off at a kind of 5-minute pace, felt fine, and just sort of, went through halfway, I think it was about 8 hours or something. So that felt like pretty pleased with that. So kind of, I don't know what that is pace wise once you take out the stops and all the rest of it, whatever it is. But that was like reasonable pacing and reasonably good. But I just felt the second half, I just faded quicker than or more, maybe no different to normal, but it felt like I was kind of fading away through muscle soreness, right, rather than sort of energy or, that sort of fatigue or, I felt like the kind of, I guess the sort of, I don't know, the engine was fine, but the muscles were just hammered. And I think part of that is the fact there was literally a curb. The pavement going on and off the pavement was the biggest hill. I know there was a bridge at one stage, and I think that was probably a factor, right? So there's no variety whatsoever. And that, I think, latter stage is kind of played into it. And I think that kind of, I think that was something. And then with that, and I messaged you during, was when I changed my trainers, I think sitting down to change my trainers, like my hip flexors kind of compressed or cramped, not cramped, but kind of compressed up. And I spent a good probably 20K with that going, oh dear, here we go. But off we went. So that was thing. So so that was, I felt the second half, that muscle soreness was something that I was kind of had less capacity for than perhaps all the other stuff that I had sort of, we didn't have a fueling problem. We didn't have a hydration problem. We didn't have a sort of fitness problem, but that was the one bit that became the limiting factor, I think. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's something, I guess I would assume that's something, no doubt you have a few ideas about how we can tackle that.
Well, it's something to sort of those who are interested. Whenever there's a change in intensity, there are several things that change off the back of that. One of the things is obviously fuel consumption. So the faster you run, the more fuel you're burning. So the routines that we were playing with during the build up and the long runs and so on were specifically designed around getting as much carbohydrate down the throat as possible. And that's something we're going to be constantly trying to achieve, is the more fuel, technically, the better. Famously, people will talk about the ultra endurance is not about fitness, it's about how much you can eat. And that's technically true. So that's part of it, but also too, the increase in intensity also increases the muscle damage that you absorb. So where you was kind of setting off, I can sort of show everybody lap by lap breakdown thanks to this. But ultimately, every sort of lap we can accommodate for, and like looking at heart rate wise, it takes you a couple of minutes to kind of creep up to sort of 160 beats a minute at around 5-minute kilometer pace. So you set out as we planned for around 5 kilometers within in the course of a field. You weren't tracking it every minute. So again, as per usual, a couple of seconds out of your goal pace just by thinking about it. And then as you said, getting towards like the 25-kilometer mark, it's just starting to drift a little bit. And that's very normal because your body is starting to accumulate damage. And that's going to be moving forwards with all the other training that we're going to be doing, is how do we offset that damage to much further down the line? It is actually quite a big part of the research community's conversation right now around how does durability get improved and measured. One of our coaches, George, is going to be his PhD is going to be in this compartment of training. So you've got VO2 max, lactate threshold, and running economy were always thought as the three or Trojan horseman of endurance performance. And now we've got the fourth one come along, which is durability, which is effectively how those other three drift over time throughout the course of a race. As we kind of skip through here down towards like kilometer 109, we haven't drifted that far off in considering how much work you've technically done. But look at the heart rate, it's lower than it was at the beginning. So that's that disparity now where heart rate was high and pace was high. Now pace is low and heart rate is low. Sorry, the heart rate is low in comparison to where it was. So we've got a little bit of an inflection point here where the intensity's increased, but heart rate has not responded in that same manner. And that's kind of where we see this sort of muscle fatigue creeping in. So from a training perspective, now it's about durability. Before, it was about increasing the intensity, becoming more familiar with faster speeds, increasing the calorie intake and expenditure. And then from here on out, now it's about retaining as much of the freshness as possible for longer.
Yeah. And that's what it's exactly what it felt like. I'll caveat that slightly. I didn't feel that the 2 days before, maybe that was the jet lag, not jet lag, but like the travel. I did feel like the message you at the beginning of that week, I felt like I was getting a bit of a kind of just, bit of a cold or something. It didn't really develop, but I felt like a little bit. And we talked about that and I kind of pulled back slightly on the session. So they were in, I did the intervals on the treadmill, not out on the road, and, just sort of pulled it back a bit. But, and so there's a bit of that maybe, but I think that's exactly how it felt. It felt like I am going pretty well and nothing is, I'm kind of putting fuel in the top and I'm running along and it's there or thereabouts. And I'm not looking at a watch anyway on those things. And I didn't wear my chest strap heart rate because otherwise I'd be chafed to bits. So, the heart rate would be a bit inaccurate and I'm not, and there's the stop start of aid stations and all that sort of stuff in there. But that's kind of how it felt. It was just like, if I could have kept that kind of pace I had for the first 40 odd K, or whatever it was, 40, and that taper just happened a bit later and a bit slower. When I went through halfway 8 hours, I was like, well, I'm not going to do the same again. I think I joked to you on WhatsApp, like this won't be a negative split session. But like I was like, well, look, I'm going to slow down a bit and then add a bit. So I was like, well, look, at 8 hours, I should be, another 8. Okay, let's call it 10. So that should be 18. And I was 19 and a bit. So it felt like it went a bit further out that curve, as it were, than I wanted. Not that you have no idea where your expectation is really on that anyway. So it's a bit of a kind of irrelevant benchmark. But I think that stuff that starts to play in your mind quite a bit because suddenly, and I noticed it this time, like we talked a bit about before about, or one of the questions was kind of what you think about. And a follow-up is like, how did the not thinking strategy go? And I think I wouldn't say I think it went reasonably well, but over 100 miles in 19 hours, there's quite a lot of time to stick on the strategy. And I found that slowdown probably hit me more than just if I'd been suffering the whole time. Because in the first half of the race, I was like, oh my God, that aid station has come a lot quicker than I was expecting. Because you're so used to, as you joke or as I'm always at, I go out there and I'm doing 5 minutes or 4:45 or 4:30, or you have a really good understanding of like how often a kilometer will tick by. And so when it's like, okay, the next aid station or water stop is 7K, I kind of know where that's going to be. That's like 7K away. But it was kind of coming sooner because I was kind of on pace, And then later it wasn't coming. They weren't there because, of course, there's a big difference between 5 something and 6 something or 6, 7, 6 or 7. And that starts to kind of be like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
And that's a spiral is too much of it wasn't like that at all. But things start to kind of creep in a little bit like, oh, this is going to take longer. therefore it's going to be harder. Therefore, when I come out of this aid station, maybe I should walk for a little bit longer to eat what I'm eating, all that sort of stuff. And that accumulates. And I guess that's probably part of the difference between maybe 18 hours and 19 hours. It all, all those little bits um, stack up.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so if we kind of go back to those who don't know the story, but when we first started working together, your almost, I'm paraphrasing, but I think almost exact words were, I've been plodding along for a reasonable amount of time now. Now I want to do these things fast. And as you get closer to your limits, that's when you start to experience things that you didn't experience before when it wasn't near your limits. So I think as you start creeping up towards a physiological or psychological glass ceiling, that's when we start to be surprised by things that we haven't experienced before because we've never been there. And I think then starting off at that really solid pace, going through 50 miles in 8 hours or so, that's not something you haven't done before. And then anything after that technically is a brand new experience. And it's going to be a really interesting sort of journey on like rediscovering yourself at the faster end of these events rather than necessarily just completing them and ticking a box.
Yeah.
Now it's about like, wow, now that's new for me, that it's not where I expected it to be, or my mind's going off somewhere that I didn't know it was going to go to.
Totally. And the whole thing is different. Okay. Even on this race, which was, I think there were a couple of hundred starters, there were 3 waves to start off. So it was a bit spread out to get off the blocks. But, you are in the front 5, 6, 10 runners. That is a totally different experience as you hit an aid station. People are flying through, like you are not. Whereas at the earlier ones I'm doing, like an aid station was a stop and okay, what's here? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Whereas this is like, as I'm running into the aid station, I'm opening a sachet ready to pour in to grab water and go. It's a very different experience. And the runners around you, as a result, are all, proper runners with old me lolloping along. But it's like you say, it's a very different experience. It's like you're going through aid stations and your moments, and it's a really long run, and it's not like you're pushing next to someone and it's real like race, but there's much more of that kind of like, I know we're moving now. We're not waiting around. Like there's a bit more of a competitive nature to it. And I think, like you say, that kind of that it shifts everything. And then later in the later stages, that exposes bigger differences than you're perhaps used to. That idea of my aim is to complete this. I have no expectation of where. I just don't want to be a cutoff, and that. Whereas now you're like, cutoffs are relevant. I'm nowhere near. I'm not. That's like, I got a taxi to the finish the next day, and people are still out there. I've been back. I've been to bed. I've had breakfast. I've got up. I've waited around. People are still out on the course. That's kind of where I used to be, and now it's like it's just a different outlook.
Did you know you finished 8th male overall?
No,
I think we should hang on. I think we should hang on that for a second.
There were 2 girls. I can't remember the names now because I met them at mile 70 or whatever. And we were literally like cat and mouse. They were crewed and I was uncrewed. And we were like, because they would stop just on the side of the road with their crew car and grab something and go. And because I was uncrewed, I had to kind of peel off the course and go to the aid station and come back. So we kind of overtook probably 20 times. I didn't realize they were ahead of me because they obviously gone past me at some point and they finished ahead of me. I was like, oh God, 2 more places. I swear I had them, but anyway, they got me good and proper.
Love it. No, it was. This is irrelevant when it comes to this conversation around your journey, but just to kind of give people the understanding of the course outlays between the first place and where you were. There was sort of 5 hours of difference of time there, but then the crazy thing about that is that's not actually, in regards to these events, that's not actually like an unnormal amount of time between people, is because it is much more spread out. And the really cool thing about that is it shows that there's potentially quite a lot of room for growth on one side too. Is if we've done everything so far and got the results we've got, like 3 hours worth of time shaving off from one event to another one, give it another year. Obviously, we won't shave maybe another 3 hours off it again, but 2 hours off, and we're suddenly up into like fifth place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And anyway, if you look at the things, the timings, like there's not many people in that first chunk, and then later it all stacks together, and it's much more kind of closer spacing. But it's amazing the difference in if you can't compute it at the time because your brain doesn't function, quite frankly. But in the last, let's say the last 10, 20K, well, there's such if not that you really are thinking like this, but if in 20K, and by that stage I was kind of like walk a section, run a section, walk a section, and I was kind of walking for 150 meters, 200 meters, run for the rest of the kilometer. But if you knew that you were whatever certain distance behind, if you change that from 200 meters to 100 meters over the course of that 20K, that's going to probably put you another 50, whatever, 10, 15 minutes up the rankings, because there's so many kilometers involved. Any of these decisions have massive impacts. And I think that's the second half was sort of showing that, was like, and that's the difference, between a part of the challenge with an uncrewed race, is that whole dialogue is going inside this place.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a mess up there, and it's a hell of a mess up there all the time, let alone second half. And I think that's a really, that's an important part with this, is like how to get that right. And that comes back to those simple things like the hydration and the nutrition, and like knowing you've got those processes ticked off is one big and significant thing to not worry about. So you can start to think about those other things.
100%, 100%. And we said before we went out there, we're gonna go out and see what we're capable of. And I think it's been a beautiful demonstration of what you're capable of, and being able to go, cool. Well, now how do we refine and learn from that experience to put into the next plan? So do we actually start off at 5:15 rather than 5 and go through the first half a bit slower and see how much that delays the fatigue by? Do we try and throw down more nutrition and sort of get, we're actually going to be looking to partner with a company that can measure how many carbohydrates you can burn per hour. Do we maximize that? That pushes fatigue further down the line as well. It's now basically like looking at strengths and weaknesses and what levers can we pull on, because it's a real nice experiment to go, let's go all out and make a statement for ourselves. And I think you learn a lot more from that once you can kind of get to that point without kind of being all philosophical about it. It's a lot easier to learn from success and like chip away at, I can do that distance, I can do that pace in micro doses or over time. But every now and again, it's nice to learn from not failure, but being at the limit.
Yeah, and finding something to tackle. Like, I think and I think as well, it takes a bit of time to kind of reflect on this stuff, because afterwards, you're sleep deprived. You're physically exhausted, but your brain is, even being awake for that long would be tired. You'd be confused, let alone taking on the silly activity of running for that entire duration. But it takes a bit of time to kind of reflect on it and think back of like what you were doing and thinking and all the rest of it. But I definitely felt that there's a sort of, it sounds weird, there's a sort of strength component to it, i.e. and I think I've said this sort of way back, or when we've been talking, it's like I feel like I'm sort of operating close to the kind of not maximum, sounds like I'm going as fast as I can. It's not that, but it's like, take like that hip flexor thing. It's like, I felt like I'm close to probably what I can do, sort of strength wise, if that's the right word. And then little things like, okay, now suddenly I'm carrying, it's not a ton, but I've got a running vest on, and out in the States you have to wear this stupid high vis thing that drives you nuts. It doesn't weigh much, but 2 bottles plus a handheld for the longer sections, plus all the tailwind stacked in, it's probably 2 or 3 kilos ish. But you add sort of 2 or 3 kilos, and I wouldn't, if I went out here and did a 30K run, whatever. Like it won't, it doesn't make a difference. But that 2 or 3 kilos over 160 kilometers, that feeling like you're close to that kind of muscle sort of threshold, it just puts you that little bit closer, but it's every step.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another, which is under the same bucket of this kind of fatigue muscle breakdown umbrella, I suppose. But it felt like that's something, I nearly ditched my vest at the last aid stop, thinking I'd rather wing it on a bottle and carrying nothing than carry this extra bit. And I didn't, because I was like, something will go wrong. But that's what you feel. You feel like this is like this little bit, I'm carrying this little bit all the whole way. And I felt that sort of, it's almost like that capacity thing. Like when you're operating close to a capacity, the wiggle room is so much less. And on something like that duration, to a degree, that kind of gets exposed.
100%, and that's kind of nicely linked into like the training for these events, in that when you're up towards the upper end of your capacity, your wiggle room is massively reduced, and injury and illness is almost on around every turn. I would much rather we be at as close to our capacity as possible during the event itself, and highlight weaknesses that we can work on and chip away at in training, rather than be at our capacity and work these things out during training. But kind of onto the strength bit, before we kind of round things off. That's going to be a focus point for us in sort of this next early part of the build. In kind of where we finished up with Nova Coley, in regards to downhill running, jumping off park benches, those kind of things that we got you doing to induce this muscle damage, to get more resilient to it. That's kind of something that we now sort of bring back into play again. But also getting back in the gym, now we've got a little bit more stability around the back situation. We haven't really had much of a complaint around that, which is fantastic, especially with the travel you had to do out there and so on. I think that's going to be a really nice opportunity to get into the gym, lift heavy, but now mileage is low. It's a low-hanging fruit to work on.
That seems like when we, like the Nova Coley, I guess the clear aim there was the ability to run down a hill was going to be the kind of deciding factor. And that, I was amazed at I'd say relatively small amount of training, the high impact of that training, like, jumping off, I don't know how many times I jumped off those low walls and benches and stuff, but it wasn't like a lot compared to the number of steps you're taking when you're running EK down a hill, but it had a massive benefit, like it was a relatively short training load with this huge benefit. So the same idea, I would hope that same idea applied to this kind of thing would be the big thing. And then, we don't, I guess at this stage, we just don't know what I'm training for, right? I.e., I don't know whether I'll get in or not. So that will factor. But I think the same is the same. That's the weak, that would be the weak area. So therefore that's the bit to think. So I will wait with bated breath what you come up with to solve that. So
love it.
Yeah. So I think overall it was pretty good, but like you say, something clear to focus on now that is tangible and will be will make that difference. If you can carry that first half, even not the whole way, but into the third quarter, that's probably an hour off that time, if not more. So
but like you said, it's like a golf ball swing. A nanometer off in a different direction when you hit that ball equals like 500 meters of swing at the other end. And you only have to change a small thing at one end to get a big one.
Yeah, I did feel that slightly. I think with my back, like the travel was not, I didn't have a problem, but I definitely felt stiff. And I think that, I don't know whether that just reduced my range of motion by a centimeter, quite possibly. Like I didn't feel like I was really kind of striding. Well, the centimeter's not a lot, but when you take 160,000 steps, it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So all to look forward to. So so I'll be taking it easy this week, and and then I guess we'll come up with some things. But I guess the overall plan is just do bits and bobs for the next few weeks, and no massive structure.
No, and I think this is where, again, without drawing on and beating up every part of the conversation, but this is where a lot of people do get back into things way too quickly. And your body needs time to recover. Okay, yeah, there is some evidence around active recovery being better than doing nothing at all, but there is no such thing as a recovery run. There's no such thing as active recovery. Sometimes people use it as an excuse to train and overtrain. Your body needs time, and there's an off season to every athlete's calendar, apart from people who run marathons recreationally. And so this is now an opportunity to recover. And we take as much of it as you can. Obviously, like you said, your brain can't even fathom the idea of going for a run right now. That's a really good sign that it's not the right time.
Yeah. No, I've had that every time. It's like physically, you kind of feel like, I could physically go and run today. But mentally, you're like, I'd get to the gate and I'd be like, nah, not today.
Good. Good. And I think a lot of people will over glamorize the idea of like, oh, just get out there and do it. It's your mind that's playing tricks on you. It's like, no, your brain's really good at knowing when it's not ready. Physically, you might be able to, but you won't derive the benefits that you think you'll derive from it. Actually, you're probably just delaying your bounce back.
Yeah, and I've had that before. Like I've gone out and done stuff, and like a week later, I've just been like, I'm still not ready, and it's like, well, what's the benefit? There's no benefit here. Like, so yeah, apart from a few sort of social runs and things that I've got on, I'll just be taking it easy, because I suspect what's coming my way will not be easy. So I'll
Yeah, to give the readers an insight, like the readers, 2 weeks pretty much of like almost complete downtime with this sort of the social side of things, and a bit of impromptu automation you can go out there and do if you really want to. But then we'll start to program things in pretty much after that, and it will be very light to begin with, and like you said, the intensity will ramp up.
say look forward to that. I will look forward to it. And I think the other thing is it'll be different, right? It won't be the same. Won't be the same sessions. It'll be another dimension, and off we go. And then we've got to do the whole application and get it in and see what we shall see. We shall see how that goes.
Let's see. Love it.
Good stuff. All right, Fletch. Well, that's it for now. It'll be probably be Christmas next time, won't it? Next one of these will be after Christmas, and that'll be
You'll do a Christmas Eve episode.
Yeah.
Get shot by both our wives.
Yeah, exactly. That won't go down well. So yeah. Very good. All right. I will catch up with you soon.
Definitely. Have a good Christmas, guys.
Cheers, and you. Bye bye.